Katie Monroe sat at her kitchen table and stared at the letter in her hands. The words on the page made her stomach hurt. "We regret to inform you that your application to the graduate biology program has been denied." She had read these same words 2 years ago. Now they were here again. She folded the letter and put it in the drawer with the other rejection letters. Katie had wanted to be a scientist since she was 10 years old. She dreamed of working in a big lab and making discoveries that would help people, but her grades told a different story. Katie had failed organic chemistry twice. The numbers and formulas never made sense to her. Her professors said she thought about problems in the wrong way. They wrote on her papers that her methods were strange and not scientific. While her classmates got jobs at big universities, Katie worked at a small animal clinic in town. She liked working with animals. Dogs and cats didn't care about her test scores. When a sick puppy came in, Katie could usually figure out what was wrong. She had a good feeling for how living things worked. But that didn't matter to the university. They only looked at grades on paper. Katie walked to work that morning feeling sad. The animal clinic was small and old. Dr. Peterson, the owner, was kind, but he was getting ready to retire. Soon Katie would need to find another job. She had no idea what she would do. That afternoon, everything changed. Katie was cleaning a dog's wound when she heard people shouting outside. She looked through the window and saw something impossible. A huge metal ship was floating in the sky above the town. It was bigger than any airplane Katie had ever seen. The ship landed in the field behind the clinic. Katie watched as a door opened and people walked out. But they weren't regular people. Some were tall and thin with blue skin. Others had fur and walked on 4 legs. And with them were humans in strange uniforms. One of the humans came to the clinic. He was a big man with short gray hair and serious eyes. "I'm Commander Jake Phillips," he said. "We're looking for people with biological training. Are you Dr. Katie Monroe?" Katie was confused. "Yes, but I'm not really a doctor. I just work with animals. How do you know my name?" Commander Phillips smiled. "We know about everyone on Earth who has studied biology. We have a job offer for you." "What kind of job?" Katie asked. "The kind that's out there," Phillips pointed to the sky. "Humanity has been invited to join something called the Galactic Defense Coalition. We're going to the stars, Dr. Monroe. And we need people who understand living things." Katie shook her head. "You've made a mistake. I failed most of my biology classes. I'm not smart enough for space work." Phillips looked at a small device in his hand. "According to our tests, you've treated over 200 different animal diseases in the past 3 years. You've had a 95% success rate. You figured out solutions that other vets couldn't find. That sounds pretty smart to me. But I don't know anything about space or aliens," Katie said. "None of us do," Phillips replied. "That's why we need people who can think differently. The aliens we're working with are very smart, but they think in straight lines. Humans are good at finding new ways to solve problems. Your professor said you have an unusual approach to biology. Out. Here, unusual might be exactly what we need." Katie felt scared and excited at the same time. "What would I have to do?" "Come with us on a ship called the UFS Liberty. Work in the genetics department. Help us understand alien biology and protect human soldiers from new diseases we might find out there." Katie thought about her small apartment and her job at the clinic. She thought about the rejection letters in her drawer. She had always wanted to do important science work. Maybe this was her chance. The aliens really want humans. "To come with them?" she asked. Phillips nodded. "They've been watching Earth for years. They say humans have something special. We see patterns that others miss. We find answers in places no one else looks. The Coalition has been fighting a war against something called the hegemony for decades. They think human scientists might help them win. Katie looked out the window at the huge ship. People were walking around it, some human and some definitely not human. It was the most amazing thing she had ever seen. "Would I really be working in genetics?" she asked. "Even though I failed those classes?" "Dr. Monroe," Philip said, "forget about your grades. The universe doesn't care about test scores. It cares about results. And you get results." Katie made her decision. She told Dr. Peterson she was leaving. She packed her few belongings and said goodbye to her small town. That evening, she walked up the ramp into the USS Liberty. The ship was enormous inside. There were humans and aliens everywhere, all working together. Katie felt very small and very scared. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt hope. As the Liberty lifted off from Earth, Katie pressed her face to a window and watched her home planet get smaller and smaller. She was going to the stars. She was going to be a real scientist, and maybe, just maybe, she was going to help save the galaxy. She didn't know it yet, but her failures in school had prepared her for the biggest success of her life. Katie's first day in the genetics department was a disaster. The room was huge and filled with machines she had never seen before. Everything glowed with blue and green lights. Strange sounds beeped and hummed from every corner. Dr. Velkari, the department head, was a Zephyrian. She was 7 feet tall, thin as a stick, and had skin that looked like metal. Her voice sounded like a computer when she spoke. "You are the human with poor academic records," Velkari said, looking at Katie through large purple eyes. "You will work on simple tasks only. Do not touch the important equipment." Katie felt her face turn red. The other humans in the department looked at her with pity. Dr. Lisa Cole had graduated from Harvard. Dr. Mike Henderson had written books about genetics. They were already working on advanced alien research projects. "Your job," Velkari continued, "is to catalog human genetic markers. Very basic work. Even you should be able to handle it." Katie was given a small desk in the corner. Her job was to look at genetic codes on a computer screen and sort them into groups. It was boring work that any high school student could do. While she typed numbers into databases, the real scientists worked on important things like weapon development and disease research. The Zephyrian equipment was confusing. Everything had too many buttons, and the instructions were written in alien symbols. Katie made mistakes every day. The alien scientist would shake their heads and fix her errors without speaking to her. After 2 weeks, Katie felt like quitting. She ate lunch alone while the other humans talked about their exciting discoveries. Dr. Cole had figured out how to make human cells grow faster. Dr. Henderson was working on medicines that could heal any wound. Katie was still sorting genetic codes like a filing clerk. Then something happened that changed everything. The Liberty was traveling through empty space when they found a dead ship floating in the darkness. It was bigger than a city block, but completely silent. No lights, no signals, nothing. Captain Betty Morgan ordered a team to investigate. When the soldiers went inside the dead ship, they found something terrible. The entire crew was dead, but not from weapons or explosions. Something had killed them from the inside. The soldiers brought back samples of the organism that had killed the alien crew. It looked like black slime under the microscope, but it moved like it was alive. The genetics department was ordered to figure out what it was and how to stop it. All the brilliant scientists got to work. They ran the organism through every test they knew. They compared it to every known disease in the galactic database. Dr. Velkari used complex equations to analyze its structure. Dr. Cole and Dr. Henderson worked day and night trying to understand how it reproduced. But nothing worked. The organism didn't behave like any known life form. It ignored all the standard treatments. It seemed to change its genetic code every few hours. The Zephyrian scientists were completely puzzled. Katie watched from her corner desk as everyone else worked on the real problem. She felt useless and left out. But she was curious, so she asked if she could look at the organism samples during her lunch break. Under the microscope, the black slime reminded Katie of something. She had seen similar patterns before, but not in any textbook. It reminded her of a parasite she had found in sick dogs back at the clinic. "It's acting like a flea," Katie said to herself. Dr. Henderson heard her and laughed. "A flea? This is an advanced alien organism. It has nothing to do with Earth parasites." But Katie couldn't stop thinking about it. The way the organism moved, the way it fed on its host, the way it spread through a body. It all reminded her of parasites she had treated in animals. She went to Dr. Velkari's office. "I think I know what this thing is," she said. The tall alien looked down at her. "You think you understand something that our best scientists cannot figure out?" "Maybe," Katie said, "but not in the way you're thinking about it. You're trying to understand it like a virus or a bacteria. But what if it's more like a parasite?" "Parasites are simple organisms," Velkari said. "This is clearly advanced. But what if it's a simple organism that just looks advanced?" Katie asked. "When I worked with animals, I saw parasites that could fool blood tests and hide from medicines. They weren't smart. They were just really good at pretending to be something else." Velkari stared at Katie for a long moment. "Show me," she said finally. Katie was nervous as she explained her idea to the whole department. Instead of treating the organism like a complex alien disease, she suggested they treat it like a common parasite. Use simple treatments that worked on Earth animals. The other scientists thought she was crazy. Dr. Henderson said it was impossible. Dr. Cole said Katie didn't understand basic science. But they had been trying everything else for 3 days, with no success. Dr. Velkari decided to let Katie try her approach. They took some of the organism samples and treated them with simple anti-parasite medicine from Earth. The black slime died immediately. Everyone stared at the dead samples in shock. The complex alien organism had been killed by medicine that cost $5 at any Earth pharmacy. "How did you know?" Dr. Velkari asked Katie. Katie shrugged. "It reminded me of a sick dog I treated last year. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right answer, even when it doesn't seem smart enough." For the first time since joining the Liberty, Katie felt like she belonged. The other scientists looked at her differently now. She wasn't the failed student anymore. She was the person who had solved a problem that had stumped everyone else. Dr. Velkari gave Katie a new assignment. Instead of just cataloging genetic codes, she would work on identifying biological threats that might not follow normal patterns. It was still basic work, but it was important basic work. Katie realized that her time at the animal clinic hadn't been a waste. All those sick dogs and cats had taught her things that couldn't be learned in textbooks. Sometimes the best way to understand complex problems was to think about them simply. As the Liberty continued through space, Katie began to feel more confident. She still didn't understand most of the alien equipment, and she still made mistakes every day. But she had something the other scientists didn't have: the ability to see problems from a completely different angle. She was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, Her failures in school had actually prepared her for something important. The alarm screamed through the Liberty like a wounded animal. Katie was thrown from her chair as the ship shook violently. Red lights flashed everywhere, and the computer voice kept repeating, "Battle stations, battle stations." Katie had never been in a real space battle before. The ship twisted and turned as enemy weapons hit the hull. She could hear explosions in the distance and smell smoke in the air. People were running and shouting in the hallways. The hegemony had found them. 3 enemy warships had surrounded the Liberty and were trying to destroy it. Captain Morgan's voice came over the speakers, telling everyone to hold on and fight back. Katie tried to get to the genetics lab, but the corridors were full of injured people. Soldiers carried wounded crew members on stretchers. The medical bay was overflowing with people who needed help. When Katie finally reached the genetics department, she found chaos. A plasma torpedo had blown a hole in the wall. Half the lab was gone, open to space. Emergency force fields were the only thing keeping the air inside. Dr. Velkari was dead. The tall Zephyrian scientist was lying under a piece of twisted metal. Most of her research team was dead, too. Dr. Cole was badly hurt and unconscious. Dr. Henderson was trying to help the wounded, but he was bleeding from a head injury. The genetics department that had been so organized and efficient was now a disaster zone. Broken equipment sparked and smoked. Important research data was scattered everywhere. The biological samples that had taken months to collect were contaminated or destroyed. Katie stood in the doorway, not knowing what to do. She felt scared and helpless. This was way beyond anything she had learned at the animal clinic. Commander. Phillips found her there 20 minutes later. His uniform was torn and dirty, and he looked very tired. "Katie," he said, "I need to talk to you." They went to his office, which was also damaged but still usable. Phillips sat down heavily in his chair and rubbed his face with his hands. "We won the battle," he said, "but we lost a lot of good people. Dr. Velkari and most of the genetics staff are gone. The department is basically destroyed." Katie nodded sadly. "Dr. Cole is hurt pretty bad. Dr. Henderson has a concussion. I don't think either of them can work right now." "That's the problem," Phillips said. "We need the genetics department working. The battle weapons the hegemony used were biological. They're designed to attack human DNA specifically. Our crew is getting sick from exposure, and it's getting worse." Katie felt a cold fear in her stomach. "What kind of sick?" "Their cells are breaking down. The ship's medical computers don't know how to treat it. Dr. Peterson in the medical bay says he needs help from genetics to figure out a cure." Phillips looked directly at Katie. "I'm promoting you to acting head of the genetics department." Katie stared at him in shock. "What? You can't do that. I don't know enough. I barely understand the equipment. I failed most of my biology classes. Remember? You're the only qualified person left," Phillips said. "The other humans are too hurt to work, and all the aliens with genetics training are dead." "But I'll mess everything up," Katie said. "People will die because I don't know what I'm doing." Phillips stood up and put his hand on her shoulder. "People are already dying, Katie. Right now, 12 crew members are in the medical bay getting worse every hour. If we don't figure out a treatment soon, they're going to die anyway." Katie felt like she was going to be sick. "What if I can't help them?" "Then we'll be no worse off than we are now," Phillips said. "But what if you can help them? What if your different way of thinking is exactly what we need?" Katie went back to the destroyed genetics lab. The surviving staff members looked at her with doubt and worry. There were 3 alien researchers left, and they clearly didn't think. Katie was qualified to lead them. Dr. Henderson, despite his head injury, tried to argue with Phillips's decision. "She doesn't understand the basic protocols," he said. "How can she run a department when she can't even operate the equipment properly?" But there was no choice. Katie was now in charge of saving the lives of 12 dying crew members. She started by looking at the sick people in the medical bay. They all had the same symptoms. Their skin was pale and their hair was falling out. Blood tests showed their cells were dying from the inside. It looked like radiation poisoning, but worse. The standard treatments weren't working. The medical computers had tried everything in their databases. The biological weapons the hegemony used were designed specifically to attack human genetics, in ways that normal medicine couldn't fix. Katie felt overwhelmed. The broken lab equipment was too advanced for her to understand. The research data was mostly destroyed. The other scientists expected her to have answers she didn't have. But then she remembered something. When she worked at the animal clinic, she had treated dogs that got sick from eating poisonous plants. The symptoms were similar: cell death, organ failure, genetic damage. "What if we treat this like poisoning instead of like a disease?" Katie asked Dr. Peterson. "Poisoning?" "The ship's doctor said. "But this is biological warfare, not poison." "Maybe," Katie said, "but the result is the same. Something bad got into their bodies and is killing their cells. When dogs ate poison plants, I didn't try to fight the poison directly. I helped their bodies clean it out naturally." It was a simple idea. Maybe too simple. But Katie had learned that sometimes simple ideas worked when complex ones failed. She asked Dr. Peterson to try basic detox treatments that were used for poisoning cases. Instead of fighting the biological weapon with advanced medicines, they would help the patient's bodies flush it out naturally. Dr. Henderson thought she was crazy. "This isn't veterinary medicine," he said. "These are advanced bioweapons." But the patients were getting worse, and nothing else was working. Dr. Peterson agreed to try Katie's approach. They used simple treatments: IV fluids to help the kidneys work better, oxygen to help the blood carry nutrients, basic vitamins to support cell repair. It was the kind of treatment any country doctor might use for someone who had been poisoned, and it worked. Within 6 hours, the patients started to improve. Their cell death slowed down, then stopped. Their organs began to function normally again. In 2 days, all 12 crew members were recovered and back to work. Katie couldn't believe it. She had saved 12 lives using treatments she had learned. While working with sick animals, the surviving genetics staff looked at her with new respect. Even Dr. Henderson admitted that her approach had worked when his advanced methods had failed. "How did you know to try that?" one of the alien researchers asked. Katie shrugged. "I didn't know. I just thought about what worked with poisoned dogs and tried the same thing with poisoned people." Word of Katie's success spread through the ship. The crew members she had saved thanked her personally. Captain Morgan sent her a message praising her quick thinking and effective leadership. For the first time in her life, Katie felt like a real scientist. Not because she understood complex theories or could operate advanced equipment, but because she had solved a problem that mattered. She had saved lives. As the Liberty continued its mission, Katie began to reorganize the genetics department. She knew she still had a lot to learn, but she also knew she had something valuable to offer. Her simple, practical approach to biological problems might be exactly what the war effort needed. She was no longer the failed student who couldn't pass basic biology. She was Dr. Katie Monroe, acting head of genetics, and she had work to do. 3 months after the battle, Katie's genetics department was working better than ever. She had rebuilt the lab using a mix of human and alien equipment. Her approach was different from Dr. Velkari's rigid methods, but it got results. Katie's team had developed new treatments for space injuries that healed faster than anything the Coalition had seen before. They created medicines that protected humans from alien diseases. They even improved the ship's biological systems, making the air cleaner and the food more nutritious. The other ships in the fleet started asking for copies of Katie's research. Coalition headquarters wanted reports on her methods. For the first time, the Liberty's genetics department was famous for good reasons. Katie felt proud but also worried. She knew she was still learning and making mistakes. Sometimes her treatments worked for reasons she didn't fully understand. She was successful, but she didn't always know why. That changed when Dr. Ray Thompson arrived on the Liberty. Thompson was everything Katie wasn't. He had graduated first in his class from Yale. He had written dozens of research papers that other scientists quoted. He had run the genetics department at Earth's most important research institute. When he walked into Katie's lab, everyone stopped working to stare at him. "So you're the famous Dr. Monroe," Thompson said, shaking Katie's hand. "I've read about your unusual methods. Very interesting." Thompson had been sent by Coalition headquarters to review the combat effectiveness of all the human science departments. He would decide which methods worked best and which scientists should be promoted or reassigned. Katie showed Thompson around the lab and explained her research. She was nervous because she knew her methods looked strange to traditional scientists. Where other genetics departments used complex mathematical models, Katie relied on simple observation and practical testing. "Tell me about your treatment for bioweapon exposure," Thompson said, looking at Katie's research notes. Katie explained how she had treated the poisoned crew members like animals with toxic poisoning. Thompson nodded politely, but Katie could see he wasn't impressed. "And you developed this approach based on your veterinary experience?" Thompson asked. "Yes," Katie said. "I noticed the symptoms were similar to cases I had treated in dogs." Thompson made notes on his tablet. "I see, and have you published any research papers on this method?" Katie felt embarrassed. "No, I haven't had time to write papers. We've been too busy treating patients." Over the next week, Thompson interviewed everyone in the genetics department. He studied all of Katie's research and compared it to standard scientific methods. Katie could tell he was not happy with what he found. The problem came to a head when Katie made a disturbing discovery. While analyzing captured hegemony biological weapons, she found something that made her blood run cold. The enemy weapons were designed using human genetic information. Someone had given the hegemony detailed data about human DNA, and they had used it to create weapons that specifically targeted human weaknesses. Katie dug deeper into the data and found something even worse. The genetic information had come from Coalition screening tests, the same tests that all human recruits had taken when they joined the fleet. Her own DNA was part of the template the hegemony was using to design weapons against Earth. She brought her discovery to Captain Morgan immediately. The captain's face went pale when Katie explained what she had found. "Are you sure about this?" Morgan asked. "Yes," Katie said. "The hegemony has been studying human genetics for months. They know our weaknesses better than we do. They're preparing something big, and it's aimed directly at Earth." Morgan called an emergency meeting with all the senior officers and scientists. Katie presented her findings to the group, explaining how the hegemony weapons worked and what they meant for humanity's survival. When she finished, Dr. Thompson stood up. "I'm afraid I have to question these conclusions," he said. "Dr. Monroe's analysis is based on unproven methods and assumptions that don't follow standard scientific protocol." Katie felt her heart sink. "What do you mean?" Your approach to genetics is highly unconventional, Thompson said. You make intuitive leaps that can't be verified. While your treatments have been successful, your analysis of complex data may not be reliable. Thompson pulled out his own tablet and showed the group his analysis of the same data. Using proper scientific methods, I can't confirm that the hegemony weapons are based on human genetic information. The similarities Dr. Monroe found could be coincidental. The room erupted in argument. Some officers believed Katie's analysis, while others trusted Thompson's more traditional approach. Captain Morgan looked frustrated and uncertain. "What do you recommend, Dr. Thompson?" Morgan asked. "I think Dr. Monroe should be reassigned to a support role," Thompson said. "The genetics department needs proper leadership during this critical time. I'm willing to take over as department head." Katie felt like she had been punched in the stomach. After all her successes, after saving lives and making important discoveries, Thompson wanted to remove her from command because her methods weren't traditional enough. "Captain," Katie said, "I know my analysis is right. The hegemony is planning something terrible for Earth. If we don't develop countermeasures now, it might be too late." Thompson shook his head sadly. "Dr. Monroe, I understand you want to help, but your lack of formal training is showing. This kind of complex analysis requires years of education and experience that you simply don't have." That night, Katie sat in her quarters feeling defeated. Maybe Thompson was right. Maybe she was in over her head. Maybe her successes had been just luck. And now she was making mistakes that could cost lives. But then she thought about all the patients she had saved. She thought about the treatments that worked when traditional methods failed. She thought about her analysis of the hegemony weapons, and she knew in her gut that she was right. Katie made a decision. Even if Thompson took over the department, even if she was reassigned to a support role, she would continue her research. The hegemony was planning something devastating, and she might be the only person who could stop it. She just had to prove it before it was too late. The next morning, Katie requested a private meeting with Captain Morgan. She had 24 hours before Thompson's assignment became official. She had one day to convince the captain that her unconventional methods weren't a weakness. They were humanity's best hope for survival. As she walked to the captain's office, Katie realized that her entire career had led to this moment. Every failed test, every rejected application, every small success at the animal clinic had prepared her for this fight. She was going to save humanity, one way or another, even if she had to fail at traditional science to do it. The Liberty raced through space toward the Hegemony Research Station. Intelligence reports said the enemy was only days away from launching their ultimate weapon against Earth. Katie worked frantically in her lab, trying to develop defenses against bioweapons she had never seen before. Captain Morgan had made a difficult choice. She kept Katie as head of genetics, but allowed Dr. Thompson to work as her advisor. Thompson wasn't happy about the decision, but he agreed to help with the mission. "This is a mistake," Thompson told Katie as they worked side by side. "Your methods are too risky. If we're wrong about the countermeasures, we could make things worse." Katie didn't argue. She focused on her work, analyzing the limited data they had about the hegemony's final weapon. Based on the patterns she saw, it would be the most devastating bioweapon ever created. It would target human genetic weaknesses and spread like a plague across Earth's population. The traditional approach would be to create a vaccine, Thompson said, showing Katie his research. "We identify the weapon's genetic structure and build antibodies to fight it." Katie shook her head. "That won't work. This weapon changes its genetic code too fast. By the time we make a vaccine, it will have evolved into something different." Then what do you suggest? Thompson asked. Katie looked at her data again. The weapon was sophisticated, but it had one weakness. Like the organism they had found on the dead ship months ago, it was still based on simple biological principles. We don't fight the weapon, Katie said. We make humans temporarily immune to it. Thompson stared at her. That's impossible. You can't change human genetics that quickly. Not permanently, Katie agreed, but we can change them for a short time, long enough for the weapon to pass through without causing damage. Katie's idea was radical. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy weapon, she would modify human genetics to make them incompatible with it. The modification would only last a few days, but that would be enough. This is insane, Thompson said. You're talking about experimental genetic modification on an entire planet. If something goes wrong, you could kill everyone you're trying to save. Katie knew he was right. Her plan was dangerous and untested. If she made a mistake, she could accidentally destroy humanity instead of saving it. But as the Liberty approached the hegemony station, Katie became more convinced that her approach was the only one that would work. The enemy had studied human genetics too carefully. Traditional defenses would fail. The battle for the station was brutal. Enemy ships swarmed around the Liberty like angry insects. The ship shook and twisted as weapons fire lit up the darkness. Katie's lab was hit twice, and she had to move her equipment to avoid the damaged areas. While the ship fought for its life, Katie and her team worked desperately to finish the countermeasures. They had hours, maybe less, before the hegemony launched their weapon toward Earth. I'm telling you, this won't work, Thompson said as he watched Katie prepare her treatment. You're violating every principle of safe genetic modification. Katie looked up from her work. Dr. Thompson, I've been violating principles my whole career. That's why I'm here. The final assault on the hegemony station began at dawn. Coalition. Forces stormed the facility while Katie's team raced to neutralize the bioweapon before it could be launched. They found the weapon in the station's central laboratory. It was contained in a sphere of energy, pulsing with dark light. Even through the containment field, Katie could feel how dangerous it was. We need to destroy it, Thompson said. No, Katie replied. If we destroy it here, the explosion could release it anyway. We need to neutralize it safely. Katie approached the weapon with her countermeasure, a simple injection that would temporarily modify the genetics of anyone who took it. The modification would make human cells incompatible with the weapon for exactly 72 hours. You can't test this on yourself, Thompson said, grabbing her arm. If you're wrong, you'll die. Katie looked at the weapon, then at the injection in her hand. Everything she had learned, everything she had failed at, had led to this moment. I've been wrong about a lot of things, Katie said, but I've been right about the things that mattered. She injected herself with the countermeasure and walked toward the weapon's containment field. Thompson and the other scientists watched in horror as Katie deliberately exposed herself to the most dangerous bioweapon ever created. The weapon's energy reached out toward her like hungry fingers. Nothing happened. Katie stood in the weapon's energy field for 10 seconds, then 20, then a full minute. The weapon that should have killed her in seconds couldn't touch her. Her genetic modification made her invisible to it. It works, she said quietly, then louder. It works. The team quickly began mass-producing the countermeasure. Within hours, they had enough doses to protect Earth's entire population. The hegemony's ultimate weapon was useless against humans who had been temporarily modified. The battle was won, but Katie's work wasn't finished. She spent the next month developing a permanent solution that would protect humanity from future genetic weapons. Her approach combined human intuition with alien technology in ways that had never been tried before. Coalition headquarters offered Katie the position of Director of Adaptive Genetics Research. She would lead a new department focused on unconventional solutions to biological warfare. "You saved our species," Captain Morgan told her. "Your methods may not follow traditional scientific protocols, but they got results when nothing else would." Katie accepted the position, but she also made some changes. She established new training programs that taught young scientists to think creatively about biological problems. She encouraged them to look for simple solutions to complex questions. Most importantly, she changed how the coalition evaluated scientific ability. Instead of focusing only on grades and formal education, they began looking for people who could solve problems in original ways. Dr. Thompson eventually became one of Katie's strongest supporters. "I was wrong about you," he admitted. "I thought proper scientific training was more important than practical results. You proved that sometimes the best scientists are the ones who think differently." Years later, when peace was finally established with the former hegemony territories, Katie was recognized as one of the heroes of the war, not because she had the best grades or the most prestigious education, but because she had saved humanity by failing at traditional science. She never did pass biology in the conventional sense, but she had passed the only test that really mattered, the test of whether her work could help people who needed it. Katie often thought about her rejection letters, still sitting in that old desk drawer on Earth. Those failures had hurt at the time, but they had also taught her something important. Sometimes the people who fail at the standard approaches are the ones who find the solutions that nobody else can see. She had failed biology, but she had succeeded at life. And in the vast darkness of space, that was the only grade that counted.